Hello. How are we doing? So, sorry I'm running late today. Honestly, today's been one of those days. We've had. Let's see. We've had both my mum and sister have had asthma attacks, which was interesting. The computer decided to make weird noises, literally because somehow a screw on the fans internally had managed to work itself loose. Not sure why, but those are the fans which occasionally have vibrated in the past already, so maybe the screw was always loose. Or maybe I need to upgrade them for Noctua fans at some point. I'm not sure. I will figure that one out. But anyway, that's taken apart, and I can't hear a thing now. It's running that quietly, so that's good. Then I needed to reinstall and set up XSplit, because that decided not to work. And, well, I also had to make a decision about this, because I want to do Discord chat this evening and chat with you all. But I also only had time to prep so much, because of, despite this being relatively easy for me and me to prep, and me just literally opening up some books in some cases, because I have dog boats and I have all sorts of books which can tell me on this. It became quite a thing of, I'm going to need to divide this up. So, next Thursday's live is going to be an interesting one, because next Thursday's live is going to be how and why World War II motor torpedo boats became motor gunboats in the Pacific Theatre. So and there is, in between that, there's going to be a long patrol on Saturday, which is going to be to do with this one, and then there's going to be a long patrol the following Saturday to do with the next one. So yes, Patron 85 is being divided up into two lives, because, honestly, when you're doing the motor torpedo boats, it becomes quite a long one. Hello everyone, and it becomes quite an interesting one. So, speaking of all that, and thinking of all that, so the odd videos are going to be the live ones, and the even ones are going to be the long recorded videos. It's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. But yes, the European and Mediterranean Theatre, and you should see that now advertised. It should be working, he says. He says it should be working. He says, while wondering why it isn't working, and going, hang on, it's not working. It's not working, that's annoying. Why aren't you working? And that. Oh, that was why, because I hadn't told her what to do on that front. No, I don't want YouTube to insert them for me. I will insert them myself. So hopefully that's now scheduled and you can now see that. I'm also going to be probably making let's schedule for the 5th of October. Yeah, that's right. I'm also probably going to be making the patron suggestions go live probably tomorrow, and the patron vote go live at some point next week. I'm doing all this and announcing this all now because there could be some abrupt changes of locale at certain points. If my monsters to keep having the asthma attacks they're having, and it's not internal to the house, it seems to be something in the garden which is causing it, and sort of that sort of region. I'm not comfortable with them keep staying here, so it might end up being naval history on the move. There might be lives, etc., and things from various locations. I might even be recording videos from other locations to bring it all together. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I think it's, only right that I give you a heads up, because patrons, subscribers are all important from one perspective, but more importantly, you're all important to me. I enjoy this naval history community, especially as, honestly, I don't get to do as much naval history teaching as I would like. Mostly waiting for posts which are naval history lecturing posts, is waiting for people to die. And because historians can go on forever, and I don't like that one. So I like doing this and being able to talk and chat and write history. Right. I would say the one part of the case I didn't assemble myself were the fans which came pre-installed. But I should have checked the screws. And I didn't, because they seemed okay. Well, it's been fun. It is the 28th of September today, and so... Oh, frigate! I've changed it behind for some reason. Why? Yeah, you're right. It's one of those... I literally just changed it, and I changed it from the 27th to the 30th for some reason behind me. I have absolutely no idea why I did that, thank you. I'm not broadcasting to you from the future. That'd be slightly more scary than, normally. Hello, I'm live and broadcasting to you from the future. That would be scary. That would freak me out, certainly. Thank you. Oi, caramba. Right then. As always, shameless book plug, but let's use this as a point to get back to something. Now, the interesting thing is how you approach this. I did consider doing a whole sort of chronological thing and talking about specific engagements and how things grow from that perspective. But I thought it more interesting to talk through the period and talk through World War II and the coastal fighters, whilst also having the different torpedo boats and when they came up, and when they actually were created. And so that's what this will be focusing through. I know, but these fans, whilst they're not Noctua, they're very good. But they have conventional screws rather than the plastic sort of sound cancelling things which Noctua fans come with. And the sort of the flexy things which stop vibrations going through. And usually they've been okay. And usually it's been fine. But it's just been a bit of an issue lately. But would the 1,750 tons and under in the Naval Treaty have been useful for creating torpedo boats, leaders and large boats? You could have made them under that. The Italians certainly tried to make the craft on that, but the trouble is, for Britain, it will sound strange, but what do you use them for? That's an honest question. What do you use for? Where are they useful for the Royal Navy? Because where are they going to be useful that you wouldn't actually be better to use a proper destroyer? And where is it more useful to you? Where do you need to justify the 750 tons versus the very much smaller motor torpedo boats? And that's the problem. Once you get into the whole thing of going, this boat, well, it would be useful, but it's an extra logistics, it's an extra training, it's extra infrastructure, it's extra design work. It's all extra things which add up and take time, effort, and money away from other things. And is it really a valuable thing to do versus that? And people have already gone, oh, 750 tons anti-submarine. Well, guess what? The coastal anti-sub stuff was mostly done by Ds. So why? Again, do you need a 750 tonner when this does it? In fact, that's where a lot of the motor vessels come in, and this is what I'll be talking about. And one of the reasons why this goes quite so big is because anti-submarine warfare is a big part of the role of the motor launches, motor torpedo boats, motor gun boats in World War II. And the Italians reclassified a load of destroyers as torpedo boats because they were small enough to fit in the torpedo boat category, and because they had built such small destroyers in the first place. But that's the nicest way. That's a way to keep their vessels in service longer. Team Locker, what was the deal for torpedo boats in the Baltic in World War II? Again, that would be an entire thing. One of the other things I've avoided in this one is I haven't got into the Soviets. And I might add in the Baltic and Black Sea to the Pacific theatre. I might well make mix that in, because the torpedo, again, I would like to add in the Soviet torpedo boats. So I might be doing the Soviet. This week I'm mainly doing the Italian, German, and British torpedo boats. And I might well end up putting Soviet, Japanese, and American together purely because they actually do fit quite well, and because then that'll make it balance. Minesweepers, everything. Come on, read the ITA classification. Plus, the speakers were just big enough for the Med. It would have been cruel to take them to the North Sea. Yeah, that's part of the trouble. The Italians built everything designed for the Mediterranean and then went, oh, frigate. It won't go elsewhere. But, as well as dog boats, you have, for those who are interested, you have VOSPA, MTBs, and US ELCOs in Allied Coastal Forces World War II. This is Volume 2. Volume 1 is Fairmile Designs and US Submarine Chasers. Again, there are a lot of these vessels around, and if you start looking through them, well, the Coastal Forces of World War II Volume 3 isn't out yet, but that's the next one. That's going to be using the Higgins and various other vessels, according to Mr. Ross. It's the problem here you have is the sheer volume and the ease of them. You have to remember there are a lot of these vessels produced. They are produced very quickly, and some of them are relatively stable designs, some of them are relatively adapted designs, but everything we have when we're dealing with things like destroyers, we have multiplied when we are dealing with things like torpedo boats. And I haven't even included the steam gunboats in this, because honestly, the moment I added them in, I then had to start adding in all sorts of things like the speakers, etc. So there's a lot of things which I'm tempted to put in and in their own category and do another thing for. So, shameless book plug. Currently, I need to work out how I'm going to get money for the pictures to finish it off, and also figure out how to potentially get money to get my mum and sister away. We'll see. You never know. You never know. Maybe it'll get suddenly very cold, and all the smells, etc., coming from the garden will go away. Who knows? I'm doubtful of that, but we'll see. So, World War I. Now, this is a very gorgeous looking vessel, and if you ever happen to be at Chatham Historic Dockyard, you can go and see it. It's a coastal motorboat, and it's a 70-footer. Okay, why are you making that noise? You literally sound like a chugging motor now. Not sure why you're doing that. Could be the fan at the back. No, it's gone now. I wish. Snow, I wish. Now, in World War I, honestly, the motor torpedo boats do not have really startling successes. The Italians do really interesting things with the mini-Adriatic, including trying to turn some of them into tanks. They have some motor torpedo boats, a very specialist one, which actually has tracks, and the idea is it will get itself over, I don't want to call it beaches, but sandbanks, etc., and things at low tide levels or through shallow water, which otherwise it couldn't go through, and then be able to attack the Austrian fleet in the harbour. The British are always thinking about the Channel. The Germans have a rather interesting experience as well, because their boats are continually being used, and in a way as a deterrent factor, and this is the whole point of these vessels. The point is they are very cheap, so you can literally chuck a lot of them at the problem. They are cheap in personnel, they are cheap in cost, and they carry torpedoes which of course can kill the giants. Torpedoes can cause massive damage. Yes, I've actually done a video in the past, I think, which talked about the Grellos in quite detail, so I'm going to leave that to one side. Tonight is about, this whole discussion is about why motor torpedo boats change from being motor torpedo boats to motor gunboats. Now, these vessels, they're also designed to be kind of seaworthy, and they have to be, especially the larger ones. Now, you don't necessarily do large oceanic crossings, but sometimes they're taken around on larger vessels, because there's already a question come in, how they move around. Sometimes larger vessels carry them around, sometimes they're carried around in completed form, sometimes kit form. But also, sometimes they actually self-deploy. They do huge distances. They carry extra fuel tanks, and they self-deploy. There is a picture I'll be showing you later in this video of a vessel which would deploy from the UK to Malta. And regularly, various convoys, especially up and down the east coast of the UK, across the Bay of Biscay, even some of the ones going through the Mediterranean, would have motor torpedo boats as extra escorts. Now, Now, why? Because it's something extra to have. And also, very quickly in the Mediterranean, very quickly in European waters, motor torpedo boats transition from being giant killers, and from that being their orientation, to killing each other. It kind of mirrors the development of aircraft in World War I. You first of all have the spotter aircraft developed that do reconnaissance and spotting for the artillery. Then occasionally they start laying eggs, i.e. they become sort of bombers. And then they start carrying guns to shoot at each other. And slowly develop fighters. Well, these launches, they start off as vessels which are mostly attached to larger ships. They're extra things for them. They're to provide, not maybe provide them with targeting, but to provide them with an extra weapon system. Especially some of the early motor torpedo boats prior to World War I. They would often be, oh, we've got a second-class motor torpedo boat, a second-class torpedo boat or something on a ramp at the stern, which would be dropped off and used. One of the interesting things is we often think of the idea of the stern ramp, where vessels, smaller vessels, are launched and recovered from, as something new. It's not. It's been around for a while. There have been a lot of ideas using it, including some ones earlier in the late 19th, early 20th, late 19th, early 20th century sort of period. There's lots of very interesting ideas going around about it. And battleships would often carry one or two torpedo boats they'd launch, and they'd use them as part of their, battle doctrine, because they'd suddenly have their own little gnats they could deploy if they were on a massive foreign station and didn't have the support of their normal torpedo boats, etc. But as time goes on, they develop into things which can kill targets themselves with torpedoes. And eventually, you need to kill them. How do you kill them? Well, believe it or not, 6-inch shells do work quite well, but you're kind of using a sledgehammer to kill a gnat. And speaking as someone today who found out that 4.5, my sledgehammer, which, as most of you know, does live in my office, mainly from the point of view of preventing anyone else in my family trying to use it, because they'd hurt themselves with it, because I've seen them trying to use it, and it was embarrassing. It was seriously embarrassing, and worrying. Anyway, leaving that to one side, I found 4.5 when I put it down today, because I'd used it for something, and then I put it down, and then when I picked it up, I found I'd accidentally squashed the spider with it. It was a case of, oh, I didn't mean to do that. It was outside. It wasn't inside this office. It was outside, just in the garden. I just put the 4.5 down, as you do after you finished using it. It'll crush the spider. So it's basically, it's like using a sledgehammer to crush a spider. Realistically, you want smaller weapons. And actually, this was the interesting thing during World War II, in that quite often the best weapon for taking out Schnellboot, other motor torpedo boats, for destroyers and cruisers, was not the 4.5 inch, was not the 4.7 inch, was not the 6 inch even. No, it was the 4 inch, the AA gun. Why? Well, it was found that the anti-aircraft shells were perfect for dealing with these kind of light-skinned, light-framed vessels. For some reason, there was a real similarity between them and aircraft. And in the Mediterranean, most often they were targeted on things like this, the Regia Marina's Motoscafo Amato Silurante. Now, the MAS boats are interesting because they basically have a continuous development. And they're continually evolving, but they start off in roughly 1914 launch deployment starting. Roughly 1914. Please note, there are some other vessels which are around sort of before then, but the version which becomes basically the standard version which everything is based on and evolutions of is roughly the 1914 one. And before anyone who has advanced knowledge of the Italian Regia Marina comes back to me and goes, no it wasn't, it was this variant, this variant. I know, there is about a dozen different models you can pick from, okay? I do realise this. I'm going with the 1914 one because that's the one which the people who have written the books like this that I've been using basis have gone with, so it keeps everything standardized if I'm using it, if I'm going with the same base point. It's just fun. And the mass boats were perfectly intriguing vessels, and they get evolved. I mean, there are other pictures of them I could have used. I used this one because, well, I like it. But I could have, if I go pick it up, have used... Come on, image, a second image. You're working for me at the moment. Oh, and you appear in the wrong place. Okay, well I could have used that. And it would have been perfectly fine. It would have been perfectly accurate. But this happens to be from 1942, and this is the stripped down version of Maz which has been sent to take part in Lake Ladoga during the siege of Leningrad. This is one wandering around the Mediterranean. They are fundamentally the same vessel, or rather similar enough they're all grouped in the same category. But I will say this, they are kind of like Italian cars, in that each one is perfectly made, but not necessarily perfectly the same as any other. Hello Drakenred. Actually, I haven't said hello to people tonight. Hello Drakenred. Hello Seneca Nero. Hello Conva Gesberg. Hello Christian Fisher. Hello Victor Yao. Hello D8. Hello Darius Radsky. Hello Christian 96831. Hello Atrimus for Dunn. Just Funk. Hello Stephen Richards. Hello Jacob W5570. Hello Otto von Bismarck. Blackburn Maximus. Hello Jack Ray. Hello IO2. Hello David Brennan. Hello Stafford Thompson. Hello everyone. Hello Timmy Loca. Hello Wayne. Hello Paul Amos. Hello Malaga. And hello... Ooh. Anyone else? Carl Gasberg. Yeah, hello. Not sure. I can't remember if I said hello to him. Hello Seven Cretu. Hello. Haven't said hello to you in a while. Hello Leslie. Hello Nautical Wolf. Hello David Goulding. And yeah, hello everyone. Sorry, I'd forgotten to say that earlier. So worried about being late, I forgot to say hello to everyone. That was terribly impolite. Hello, Andrew Cruz. I would also add, Christian Fisher, you just mentioned the Germans did armour their Schnell boots in World War II. They did armour them. Not that much. And honestly, the RN, they looked at heavier weapons, but they were moving, and more they wasn't they were moving to heavier weapons because of that. It's they wanted to kill them more quickly. The amount of armour you're talking about put onto a Schnell boot, if you want to maintain the same balance and speed, and which is what they were doing, you're talking about millimeters of armour. You're not talking anything heavy. There is some heavier armour put round the cockpit and certain areas like that to protect it. But honestly, it doesn't really help much. It gives the crew, the conning tower and the conning position, some protection. But again, it's not a lot. And as you point out, too much armour would be self-defeating. And that's the trouble. It's sort of, yeah, you go for heavier weapons, but the British already were putting in the heavier weapons anyway. It's not really a response to the armour, because the British are going, eh. But it's more a response to the fact that the British have motor gunboats coming out trying to take them out. And honestly, the Germans are the slowest to go to motor gun boat route. The Italians go there before the Germans do. The British go there before the Germans do. The Germans are slowest probably because, and this is going to sound, because they have spent the most time in many ways with their modern Schnellboat, and they are the most happy with it. So they are the most sure it's a very good design. Yes, they've evolved it, but they're the most sure it's a very good design. Our mass boats are really cool in many, many ways. Please note, I'm going to say really cool in many, many ways. But you actually have to be very careful what you're defining. The mass boats of World War II had a speed of roughly 45 knots, carried two, let's be honest, 18-inch 450mm torpedoes, and a machine gun. They were using newer, that's the MAS 500 ones, so like this one, 528. And, yeah. They were using the newer ones primarily in Mediterranean, but the older ones were still being used. It's one of the really interesting things that the Italians get a lot of use of their mass boats because the Mediterranean is perfect for them. You can afford to have a small, light, poppy around craft that's very high speed and basically a jet ski with torpedoes is how I would describe some of them. But they are really, yeah. It's, they're not really designed for high levels of combat. They're just not. They're designed for the kind of combat where you charge in, you hit your opponent, and you get out. It's hit and run tactics. It's guerrilla warfare at sea. Which is also another reason which drives the difference in development. Because if you are trying to combat that, you need to start thinking of a different weapon system than if you're trying to carry that out. Firing torpedoes is a very good weapon if you're doing hit-and-run attacks, because you fire the torpedoes at the target, and while the target's focusing on those, you peel off and get away. So the target is both currently concentrating on the torpedoes, not on you, while you're getting out of there, and they might get hit by the torpedo, they might not. It's I'm interested in emotional support armor. Thank you. Liking the channel does help the channel. And after the day I've had, it's really quite nice. Now we get into the first of the German fast boats. And this is the one which is most often forgotten, but this was a really cool one. The Rhomboot. Now, the Rhomboot, it's a really cool little craft, and primarily were originally designed for minesweeping, for all sorts of support operations, but they often take part in the operations, and sometimes there are some quite... I would want to do specials on these little battles, and I might do some specials during the Christmas period. I'm not sure, I haven't quite defined all the Christmas specials yet, so I don't want to get into some of the details I might go into then. But sometimes we hear about the attacks and they're doing, yes, it was Schnellboot, or less, and you sort of go, well, why are you saying it's Schnellboot? Well, the British, they describe it as E-boats attacking, so there must be Schnellboots. No, the British, at several points in World War II, are using E-boat because it describes enemy boat. Now, at a certain point, that's useful, because you know they're the enemy. But at another point, if you are dealing with a historian who doesn't realise that the Germans had more than one small, fast craft, they can quickly make a bit of a boo-boo. And that boo-boo can get repeated down through history, because people can go, well, this eminent historian has said this was Schnellboots. But it's kind of like Spitfires. Every German who's ever in a dogfight and ever shot down was shot down by Spitfires. They are absolutely sure it was a Spitfire. It doesn't matter if you show them the data and go, look, there were no Spitfires operating in that area, there were only Hurricanes. So I'm sorry, you were shot down by a Hurricane. They were shot down by Spitfires. There's even one Me-109 pilot going around the world who I'm sure, from what I've been told by German historians, will claim he was shot down by Spitfires over Norway. He was shot down by an aircraft which shot him from below and behind, and he wasn't quite sure how he got hit. Now, there is also in Norway, there is a swordfish which claims it shoots down an Me-109. Because the Me-109 is just poodling along and doesn't... The swordfish thinks it dives down on it and then poodles along and doesn't get it, and it then rises up and shoots that down. Maybe the Me-109 didn't even see the swordfish pottling along, I don't know. But I'm sure, but the Me-109 pilot is sure he was shot down by a Spitfire. The odds are, though, the only British aircraft flying in that area was a swordfish, belonging to HMS Warspite. This wasn't during Narvik. So, on board. Well, translates literally as clearing boats. They were mainly minesweepers, but that's what they were designed for. But they were used for anti-submarine warfare. They were used for all sorts of things. And they are, well, 424 of these vessels are built for the Kriegsmarine before and during World War II. They're used in the Baltic, Mediterranean, Arctic, and Black Sea. They're used for convoy escort, coastal patrol, mine laying, air-sea rescue. And 140 of these boats are used post-war, including by the Allies, but also by the German minesweeping administration. These vessels just get everywhere and are used for everything, and they are really cool little vessels. Yeah, it's like Hetzer. There's only one reference in German documentation of one particular unit calling a particular tank destroyer Hetzer, but some post-war name got applied to a different one. Yeah, that would be yeah. It was a float-plane swordfish. The really slow version. Don't worry, Tanif. I think I'm pronouncing right when I say round boat, but I could be getting it wrong. Look, the video which comes out tomorrow, I'm very careful about HMS Warspite. Very careful. Very careful. And by the way, for anyone wondering what I'm eating, did manage to grab a little bit of lunch, but I'm a bit hungry. And I found these from West Country Legends. So, again, please note, I have never been and never probably will be sponsored by anyone. I doubt I will ever get the channel to that level. But rather than patron. So thank you, patrons and subscribers. But I will say these are very nice, and you can order them from Amazon. West Country Legend cheddar cheese straws. So if you like cheese straws, these are good. The fact that they spend their entire time advertising on the side their other variants of cheese straws they do, which include some sea salt and rosemary cheese straws, I'm not so sure about. Look, you've got a very good cheese straw. Don't try and muck it about. D8. The chieftain point out that in one of his talks that every German tank was apparently a tiger. Once tigers came into existence, even if they were exceedingly rare. Yes! Oh, glad I'm getting my German. The fact that I gave up didn't give up, but was made to go up German at 13. I'm glad I'm getting something right. Anyway, these are incredibly important, and they appear in all sorts of spaces. Now, some of them take a long time to build. Some of them take less time to build. And they do build different variations of them. The original ones, the R ones, start off at 60 tons. And are roughly 26 meters long. The R400s are the last class produced, are 140 tons. And they're built between 1943 and 45, and most of them weren't completed by the end of the war. The R300s, which were the heaviest, were 160 tons, and they were built between 42 and 45, and they carried two, and please notice, two 21-inch torpedo tubes, 533mm torpedo tubes. And those were the longest and the largest. So again, one of the other things you have to remember with quite a lot of these torpedo boats is that whilst we will have a variation of a torpedo boat, they will be designed. They're all under the same name. They're evolutions of that design. And it's in 1934 they get to roughly 115 tons. And then their design sort of standardizes around it. There are even some which are steam powered, believe it or not. But the round boat come into existence, and the Germans use these things, as said, for everything. The torpedoes were optional, but it was basically an ad hoc option until you get to the R300s, as I understand it. From the R300s onwards, they had very much the ability to carry the two torpedoes and could possibly load more depending on the options. Because mainly these had actually been built, arguably, as motor gunboats. They were to do minesweeping, they were to do mine laying. Because, by the way, anything that's fitted to do minesweeping can also do mine laying. I'm just like to put that out there, because someone will suddenly come back to you. No, they were designed with mine clearing capabilities. Well, guess what? The same equipment that you used to do mine clearing in this period is also equipment you can use for mine laying. You have to have sometimes racks of storage of mines which you manage to recover because you want to get them back home for intelligence. You want to, yes, use various tools to drag them, disable them, but also the same cranes, same things you can use for deploying those tools can also be used for laying mines. So guess what? Yeah. Mine clearing, mine laying. The two go hand in hand. Yes, we're going to be getting into the R1s. What I love is the chat is going right where I'm going, and it's understanding. I think you'll all understand why this has gone from being one live to being two lives and two long patrols. Because there are just so many modifications, there's so much to discuss about them, and they are quite interesting. These are mostly built by Larsen, Abeking Rasmussen, and Schlichting, which I am probably pronouncing terrible, but that Schlichting is in Travemünde, Borough Lübeck. Larsen is in Bremen, and Abeking Rasmussen is in Lemwerder, which is in Lower Saxony, believe it or not. So far from the sea, but suitable for rivers. And it's on the River Weser. So the yard was really good at building yachts and small naval vessels, and that's what they focused on. And so these are really finely produced vessels. But I will say this for them. The Germans are very proud of them. And they are technically very, very... How do I put this? They are... The German vessels, I would argue, are slightly higher engineering than their British counterparts. They are often designed for finer lines and higher speeds. And they live up to that. But finer lines, higher speeds tends to make them not so good once they're further out in the North Sea in rougher weather. There is also the fact that this affects their stability as gun platforms, which is another reason why they are focusing in on their torpedoes, because their ability to fire the torpedoes, they can align themselves, fire the torpedoes, get out, and it makes them good for attacking big targets, especially coastal convoys. I've done some videos recently where I've talked about the British coastal convoy system and going up the East Coast, and the fact that the Germans chucked everything at them, including these boats. They are really, really good at that. But they are finer craft. And the real example you see this in is the far more famous Schnellboot. Now, this is when you start to go, well, you know, hang on. So this is the more famous one. This is the one which everyone talks about. And you sort of start looking at the units and go, well, how many get built and of these? And, well, 44. I'm just double checking my own maths here. 44 plus 58 and 81. That's 102, 183. So for Schnellboot produced, there are 183... No, 190... hang on, there's those as well. So, 191 built. So there are actually less Schnellboots than there are Rumboot. Now, this is the real point about why I find it funny whenever you see the ratings. It was always we were fighting an E-boat and it's always presumed to be a Schnellboot. There are less of these built than Rumboats. And these also have certain roles based on them. They're used for certain things. They used things like, they were though very finely designed. They used stuff like the Larsen effect. Also, you have to remember, some of the Schnellboots built didn't serve with the Germans. They served with other navies. They served with the Spanish Navy during the Spanish Civil War, or on the nationalist side. They served with Yugoslav Navy. They served with the Regia Marina. In fact, this one, I think, is a Regia Marina vessel. No, hang on, no, that one. 472 is a post-World War II Regia Marina vessel. Sorry, my own notes, I flipped them round. I flipped the pictures round, but hadn't flipped my notes round. Don't do that. Don't do that. It'll make you look an idiot. When you flip the pictures round, because they look better that way around, Make sure you flip your notes around so you're not reading the wrong notes for the wrong picture. Oh. And Christian Venture, E-boat. Well, you see, the thing is, as I've said, all German torpedo boats are referred to at various points as E-boats, whether they're round boats or Schnell boats. Now, E-boats these days, enemy boats, are often categorized as these. The Schnell boats are the ones which are focused in on. They're the ones which you read, they're E-boats. And the round boats are often called R-boats. But there are some historians who, as I've said, and I'm not going to start picking on them, but you do find some accounts where they're listing as they were fighting off E-boats, and they've transferred over to Schnell boats, because, they're right, they've gone in the history and they go, no, they weren't E-boats, they were Schnell boats, because that's what the Germans called them. That's correct! But actually it wasn't a Schnell boat squad, it was a Schnell boat flotilla which was doing the attack, it was a round boat flotilla. Now, mine clearing sweeping is like the Royal Engineers and bridges. They are very good at building bridges, as they are tearing them down. Yes. Sure, I know in the US PT boat trials it was determined that standard naval fittings were overkill, and thus the designs that had those were less suited for adoption. There are all sorts of interesting options when you get into the American trials, which is another reason why that video is going to be next week. Yeah, I just reviewed the data Cheater mentioned, but it was Steve Zagola's research. Between Normandy and Victory in Europe Day, American tankers met Tigers once only 3 times. The first time, the Shermans won. The second time, the Pershing lost. And the third time, the Tigers were being loaded on rail cars, so it wasn't exactly a fair fight. No, that wouldn't be a fair fight, but it would be an effective fight. As a lot of time misses because the Shermans went around in platoons of 5 and companies of 27. So of course, if there's one Tiger on or a platoon, you don't just take one. You take your mates. Yes, you do. No. Here is where they start off. Okay, and again, this is the interesting point to think about with the Schnellboot. As they start off, the original ones are literally testings. They're starting off in 1929, 1930. And the first 6 of these vessels were actually sold to Spain in 1936. This one included. It was actually renamed Bajuras and served in the Spanish Civil War. They kept building vessels and getting them better and better. But as said, a lot of them were sold off. The first diesel-powered vessel was the S6, and then the S7, built from 1933 onwards, has the improved hull form, can make use of the Lursen effect to an extent, and are operational diesel vessels fitted with manned diesels, displacing roughly 80 tons. If we consider the first vessels, the S7, it's commissioned in 1934, but it survives World War II and ends up being transferred to Britain. S8 and S9 were both converted to fast submarine hunters in 1940. S8 transferred to Britain, scrapped in post-war, scrapped after 1947. S9 transferred to Norway and sunk in January 1946 in the North Sea. S10 was also transferred to Norway in 1945. S11 was transferred to the Soviet Navy in 1945. S12 transferred to Norway in 1945, sunk in January 1946. And S13 transferred to Britain in May 1945 and sold as scrapped. S14, which were improved S7s, well, S14 was converted to a fast tug. Sunk in the Bristol Channel in 1944. There are a range of uses for these vessels. But one of the things that's consistent about them is they are focused around the torpedoes. They carry 21-inch torpedoes. Now, they also carried a single 20mm gun and had a crew of 21 men from the S7 onwards. And they just keep developing from that. But if you want to take off the torpedo tubes, you can. As you can see, the Italians have with the 472 up there. And when you're doing that, you can then modify and then put in place of the torpedoes, you can put a range of guns. And that does start to happen later in war. One of the favoured ones is flak guns. AA weapon systems, heavy cannon. Why? Because usually they are self-stabilised. Or at least they are self-stabilised enough that you can actually use them with the motion of the vessel and actually sort of hit your target. But the big problem for the German vessels was they were designed very, very thin. And if you're operating in the North Sea, and Arctic waters, it does not reward vessels for being very fine. It rewards vessels for... well, it doesn't reward vessels for anything. At no point do the northern water, there's the North Atlantic or the North Sea or the Arctic, at any point like any vessel on it at all. They really don't. And yes, the 21-inch torpedoes were not light torpedoes. They were frigating heavy torpedoes. Most other torpedo boats went with 18-inch. And as people are saying, yes, they ended up everywhere, and Chanel boats did end up everywhere, and everyone seemed to get some. Now, the 1940 Royal Navy Harbour Defence Motor Launch. One of those vessels you are going to least hear about, because let's be honest, its name, the Harbour Defence Motor Launch. That doesn't sound that particularly inspiring, does it? That's not something that's not a Schnellboot or something. It doesn't really roll off the tongue. But I promise you, after hearing about them, you are going to be sitting there going, oh, these are cool. And they are. If I can find my notes. There we go. There are my notes. Ay, caramba. Now, 72 foot long, designed by the Admiralty themselves in early 1939 as part of the preparations for war coming, presumed in 1942. They were powered by twin-handed Gardner 8L3 marine engines. Pretty decent little engines. They had a top speed of 12.5 knots. So they're not really fast. They had a range of 2,000 nautical miles at 10 knots. They had a crew of 2 officers, 2 petty officers and 8 ratings. And they were armed typically with twin 20mm Oricons, twin Vickers K machine guns, and 6 step chargers. The hull was a wooden construction, planked with 2 diagonally opposed skins, with a layer of oiled calico in between. And the Royal Navy built a lot. There are 486 of these completed. They are incredibly simple, but as you can see, this is pictured in Padstow, with the extra fuel and tank stores to do the voyage to Malta without refueling in 1944. Yes, exactly. These are harbour defense. It's always we designed the harbour defense motor launch. Yes, it has a range of 2,000 nautical miles at 10 knots. So you define your harbour as the entirety of the North Sea? Well, whilst we don't like the Italians who suggest that the Mediterranean is Mare Nostrum, yes, the North Sea is our harbour. They were tough little craft. Most of the hulls in HML hulls were planked in mahogany. But as the war went on, mahogany became more difficult to get, so larch was used, which wasn't as good. And here's the really fun thing. The Royal Navy had to reopen some special departments at Chatham because boats being operated in the tropical waters, this included the Mediterranean, were given a copper sheathing below the waterline to prevent the attack of marine borers which could make holes in the wood. Each hull is divided into 6 watertight compartments, and they could remain afloat as long as only one compartment flooded. They could guarantee to remain afloat. If they had 2 flood, they still seem to most often survive. But it's calculated that they could that if any one of the compartments flooded, the others would be able to keep it afloat. But it was found that if the 2 smaller ones were the ones flooded, they could stay afloat quite well as well. And some actually ended up in service of the Royal Netherlands Navy after World War II. Some were built and nominally owned, of course, by the United States Navy on the Lend-Lease system. But, you know, hence they were built in Rye, New York. And I just love these things. And, by the way, if you want to know how they got them across the Atlantic, well, some of them came across interestingly. Because there's a question as to whether the phrase usually used, they came across with convoys. And the question is, did they come across on top of the convoy, or did they come across along float going with the convoy? Because let's be honest, a little bit of extra fuel, they could probably do an Atlantic crossing. I think most likely they came across on top of the decks. But there is a part of me which does wonder if some did. Did they go to St. Nazir? Tenerife? No, no, no. That's Fairmile Seas. We'll be getting to those. How heavy are they? Well, that's an interesting question. They displaced 54 tons fully loaded. So with all fuel, weapons, everything on aboard, they weighed 54 tons. And each of their engines supplied them with 152 brake horsepower. So when West Germany rearmed after 1950, 2 Schnell boats got returned to them, S-130 and S-228, along with 8 R boats. They had a boat which they retained from war, S-116. Cool. It's a harbour defence craft. Harbour defence craft. Yes, but which harbour? Yes. Yes, harbour defence motor launch. Yes, the HDML. I'm surprised more of you haven't noticed that. HDML. It, of course, these days, is kind of used for other things. HDML tends to come for. But, yeah. Oh, Drac would definitely want one. Now we have possibly the... Okay, so let me just put this out for you. Some of these are ordered from America by the Dutch to go to the Dutch East Indies. They don't get delivered because the Dutch fall to the Germans. And so the Americans actually take them into service. So the Vosper 70-footer, oh my lord, does this thing serve in a lot of navies. I mean, seriously, this thing has basically got to catch... everyone wants to have one. And, by the way, if you do the search, you'll usually find the 73-footer. That's actually not the same craft. Yeah, Vosper. Yes, we're building a 70-footer, the 73-footer. We also got a 72-footer design we're offering to people. What? Vosper, please stop this. You kind of try, you know, Vosper are kind of like the Mercedes-Benz of small craft. They've got to have a different variant for everyone. Now, they had a complement of between 10 and 12. They could be armed with 20mm cannon. They could have 21-inch, well, 2 21-inch torpedo tubes, as a rule. They could have 20mm cannon or multiple .303s. Sometimes they had all sorts of things added in. 0.5-inch guns as well were often quite loved. They often had quite a few of those. They had a maximum speed, theoretically, of 33 knots. But there are some records of some of these 70-footers going potentially faster than that. But again, this is a British design. Depending on the engine fit, they would have petrol engines and 2 or 3 shafts, and they could, some of the later engines, provide them with roughly 3,450 shaft horsepower. If you're thinking about that, yes, this is a vessel which has a displacement measured in very few tons. And 3,450 horsepower. So whilst the official maximum speed was 33 knots, some of them, the petrol engine 3-shaft vessels could do roughly 42 knots. Officially, some of the 2-shafted petrol engine with 2,300 horsepower could do 27.5 knots, and officially the 3-shafted 900 shaft horsepower vessels, which there were a few of them, could do only 25 knots. Officially. Oh, yeah. So, basically, there's handheld device markup language, which is the one which which comes across a lot for me. I found this when I was searching for stuff to do with the Harbour Defense Motor Launch, and handheld device markup language came up a lot instead of the Harbour Defense Motor Launch. So, fun fact, the Flag class, to pick an ocean-going ship at random, has 2,700 shaft horsepower. Yes! Basically, what I think happens with the Vosper 70-footers is someone goes, so you want speed? And the Royal Navy goes, yes. And they go, how much? And the Royal Navy goes, yes, again. But the Jack, oh yeah, that's reviews up. Let's see Boost go. But for some reason, HTML, as in handheld device markup language, is less obscure than Harbour Defense Motor Launch. Oh, I don't ask me why. And there's HTML, the other things, but yeah, HTML. Cody, I pulled up my War Thunder again for 3D views. Please do. A rocket booster. So, British design. We don't know how fast they will. Yeah. That's the other problem. Because, now, here is one of the things that they did find happened was that the engines which were originally fitted, especially the ones which were the faster ones, came with systems which were supposed to stop the engines being pushed too far, because we were worried that if they went too powerful, they would shake the boat apart. Because again, it's a wooden construction planked with two diagonally opposed skins with a layer of oiled calico in between them. And no. Check my notes. Yep. Yeah. It's roughly the same as the previous ones and the Vosper 73s. So all of them are about the same. And the Vosper 70-foot torpedo boats are yeah. If anything could drive me to drink, it's probably... Don't just say this note. Vosper and produce all sorts of interesting vessels. But the Packard V112 marine engines that they use for some of them could be tinkered with a lot. And there is a note which I found which was the only vessels which could keep up with the Abdeel class mine layers in World War II. I think they're Abdeel class, or is it Abdeel Manxman class? The vast mine layers the Royal Navy has in World War II. I'm currently having a brain fart on that topic and cannot remember whether it's the Abdeel class or Manxman class, and it's called the Abdeel. I know the British have mine layers of both types, were cruisers. Various one in World War I, one in World War II, but brain fart over which one. The only vessels which could keep up with them were tinkered with Vosper 70-foots. So, yeah. Autonomous, at what sea stage could Vospers operate at max speed? Again, there's the maximum speed they could have, the sea state they were supposed to go to maximum speed in, and there's the sea state they actually went to maximum speed in. Let's put it this way: probably sea states 2 and 3 were supposed to be the max where they would max out, if not 1. Unofficially, it's known they were still operating very happily in Sea State 3 and putting their things to maximum. That's good. And of course, one of the first things the crew. Of course, if you're the crew, the first thing you're going to do is disable the regulation system and just go, yeah, it may shake our hull to pieces, but it will stay alive. Now we're into the Fairmile family. Oh god. And please note, there is a reason I am putting months. No other vessels have I put the months near when they've been launched. I'm just talking about the years, because for our topic of conversation, the years are enough detail for us. But no, it's worthwhile pointing out what happens with Fairmile. Jack Ray, off topic, was there ever any record made of the Abdiel class speed? No official record. Unofficially, there were American carrier battle groups doing full speed and they outpaced them. By a sufficient... They basically started off behind them, they were going at full speed, and the Abdiel overtook them. Cody, if possible, with anything on the engines. Look, it's not just the red. You know, you're talking about the rednecks. Yeah. In Britain, it was the Cornish fishermen who were Royal Navy reservists who were the really interesting ones. Them and some of the Scottish fishermen. Because they had a really pragmatic approach to speed. I've heard rumours of Lost Cruise and Schnellbridge would operate at 6 or 7. Yes, but they wouldn't be operating at full speed in 6 or 7. You asked me when they would still be operating at full speed. And you have to remember, the most of the effects these vessels use, the rougher the sea states, the more difficult it gets them to operate at full speed, because they need to plane sort of along the water. That's mostly what they're using various effects to allow them to basically almost glide over the top of the water rather than actually fight through the water. And the bigger the seas you get, the more rougher the seas, the less likely you can go up and down them. Did actually I found a top speed for the first 7 foot 70 footers. Yeah. Son of a see you in Egypt was the alleged signal to the US carrier group. Anyway, the Fairmiles A's. Ay caramba. Now these are... And the works she made 47.8 knots unloaded, 43% knots loaded, and after amortized on 58, she was purchased and became MTB 102. What was that, glitch in the audio? I don't think there was a glitch in audio, but there might have been me putting that in that. Because I've got a bin over there. Fishing modifications. This image of North Shields and Blythe Fishing had races to and from fishing grounds in the North Sea. Yeah. No, the audio stuttered. I think it was YouTube. Ah. So I got too loud. D8, 69.5 feet for 3,600 brake horsepower on 33 tons. Are you sure that's brake horsepower, not shaft horsepower? But it could be. Now, Fairmiles. Fairmiles. Now, these are again vessels which you have to think about. Because the Fairmile A was 57 tons before it had any armament and equipment added. It was 34 meters long, roughly 5.3 meters in beam, and its draft was 1.37 meters forward and 1.98 meters aft. They had Hull Scott Defender V12 engines, 3 of them, giving them 800 horsepower. And they have a theoretical speed of 25,000 knots at 2,200 RPM. Please note that specifically phrased at 2,200 RPM. The 8 shaft horsepower is turbines reciprocating as you use brake horsepower. No, some of the British testing used shaft horsepower still for reciprocating engines. Some of the British testing did, and there was a whole debate on that in naval constructors. So I was checking whether you were using that one or the shaft, or it was one of the ones which was using shaft horsepower, because one of the constructors who was using it insisted on converting all to shaft horsepower so they could compare it to their other equations and their other ship designs. Anyway, they had a theoretical range of 520 nautical miles at 12 knots, and their crew was pretty much the normal: 2 officers, 2 petty officers, and roughly 12 crew. They carried Aztec. They were armed with a 3-pounder Hotchkiss gun, quick firing, a pair of .303-inch Lewis machine guns, and 12 depth charges. And Jacob, no, that's wrong. That's right, bullshit. Yeah, but some of the testing, Jacob, he is right that some of the testing done for, and as I said, when he's talking about the initial testing. Some of them were done in brake horsepower because someone insisted on them because of the reason he's saying. But it was later on standardized, but some of the testing was also done in shaft horsepower, and then by the time World War II was in full flow, it was all standardized on shaft horsepower because of the whole shaft through prop and after gearbox, etc., all those things, and various other things going through. But again, some of the early motor torpedo boats were literally direct from the engine to there was no gearbox basically used, from memory. And that was part of the reasoning for it. Now, and that was all without me looking up on my notes, but that was from memory of it, because I guessed what D8 was looking at. Anyway, fair miles. These are, how do I put this? They're designed with what's called a hard chine planing form boat, okay? So that's optimizing for speed rather than range, because it's designed as a coastal subchaser. The Royal Navy built 12 of them. These are basically the initial starting of the fair mile working. What was the patrol boat that was disabled by Boy's anti-tank rifle? You'll have to give me a context on that one, because there are a lot of torpedo boats which are disabled by a whole lot of anti-tank rifles. It's kind of, some of them were even actually using them when they were disabling other torpedo boats with them. Now, the whole thing was, the Type A had issues with seakeeping, and so they only built 12. But they developed them into this fair MGB. And yes, that's flying a black flag, signaling it has ASDIC contact. Now, the MGBs, and this is again the problem. This is how to put this. Once we start talking about this is again where you start to get into the issues of World War II, where you go, it's a logistic, it's a structural thing that there is not really much of a chance for the access. Because you go, well, how many of these torpedo boats did the British complete? And you've heard, you know, the round boats, 240-ish, including the ones built prior to World War II, the Schnell boats, roughly 190-ish, again, including the ones built before World War II and held off to other things. Fair MGB, 650. Yep. 650 of these. Now, their theoretical top speed was 20 knots. Their engines were Hall Scott Defender petrol engines. And again, they had ASDIC. Now, it depended on what they were doing, what they're armed with. Because the initial sub-chaser versions, again, 3-pounder Hotchkiss gun, twin .303 machine gun and 12 depth charges. Later on, some of them dropped their 12 depth charges, instead picked up a second twin .303 machine gun, an Oerlikon 20mm cannon, and a 40mm cannon from Bofors. Very nice, thank you very much. Very helpful to have those. And by the way, the 3-pounder is a 76mm. What I would add, and I will say this is quite important to remember, is that, yes, their wheelhouse was plated, but more importantly than that, a lot of the we are going to upgrade their guns that happens later in World War II is a recognition of the fact that they've already had their guns upgraded by the crews. And we're trying to standardize this for logistical reasons. What do you mean standardize for logistical reasons? Do you have any idea what they have on them? Some of them are going around with Italian AA guns they've managed to get hold of. We still do not know how they got hold of the Italian AA guns, but they have. £3 for it. Hang on. Yeah, you're right. It's 47mm. Why did I do 76? Oh, yeah, 3-inch. Sorry. I converted the wrong one in my head for my notes. Thanks, Cody. Ay, caramba. It's been one of those days. As I know, we did. Please note, we did start off with that saying the 30th of September, so yeah. 6-pounders, 57mm, yes, I know. For some reason I was converting a quick firing 3-inch in my head. Don't ask me why. Instead of a 3-pounder. Now, these are vessels which are used in Saint-Nazaire as the assault transports. 12 of the 16 are lost in that operation. During Normandy landings, they use as navigation launches and all sorts of other duties. Many were used as rescue launches. Many were used for all sorts of duties throughout World War II. And this, by the way, is in 1941 this picture comes from. and I think it's His Majesty's Canadian motor launch. They were built in Canada, they were built in Britain, some of them were built in the US, and the US Navy actually used some of these as sub-chasers as well. The quick-firing 3-pounder is considered quick-firing. It's still considered quick-firing. It's not manually operated. Also, just because it's called quick-firing doesn't mean it's automatic. That's a different designation. 3-pounder quick-firing is the designation because it's quick to load and you can quickly fire it. Not it's an automatic weapon. The 4.7-inch was often considered quick-fire. Was classified as a QF weapon, and that's manually loaded. I don't think they built any of the Bs. I might have actually built some of the Bs. They built some in New Zealand. They built them in Australia. Some of them were salvaged by the Japanese. Some were built in South Africa. I'm looking through notes to find if some were built in India. No. Can't find any being built in India. I think there are some still sort of wandering around. There's one in Brixham wandering around, and there's a couple of others wandering around. As the 8-point, quick firing can mean semi-automatic breach, i.e. it opens itself and ejects a shell after firing. The British quick firing was around for a long time before they had got to automatic guns. These are useful vessels, but again, their development is as sub-chasers, is for the minesweeping role. Not necessarily for the killing other ship roles. Well, I'm sorry, Otto, but the Hotchkiss is listed, and the 3-pounder Hotchkiss is considered a QF 3-pounder. That is its standard rating in the Royal Navy. So, if you want to take that up with the Royal Navy in the 1920s and 30s, you can, but that's what it is. So, it's a classic case of, it might not be QF by our standards, but it's QF by their standards. And means using cased ammo. There are all sorts of things which went into meaning quick firing. Usually breach could open it by itself, so to speed up manual loading. It would use cased ammunition, all sorts of things that would speed up loading and require less crew. So, then we have the Fairmile C, and please note the change. Previous have all been called motor launchers. This is 1941 June, and there's a motor gunboat coming along. Oh, good Lord, help us now. Now, the C, as designed, had a 2-pounder, quick-firing 2-pounder, Mark IIC. Also had a quick-firing 2-pounder Mark 14 gun. So it had a Mark II gun, 2C gun, which was basically a pom-pom. No. Yeah, that's a pom-pom. It has both a Rolls-Royce designed QF 2-pounder Mark 14 gun and a Mark II gun. It has 4.5-inch Vickers machine guns in 2 twin mounts. It has 4.303 Vickers machine guns in 2 twin mounts. Later on, this developed into, again, still having the 2 40mm 2-pounders guns, up to 4 20mm Oricon in, well, 2 single and a twin, and depth charges as well added. But again, there are examples of these vessels which are recorded as having gone to sea with as many as a dozen machine guns on them, let alone other things. They build 24 of them. Why? Because they are basically developing something towards the idea of what's going to be the D, but they don't have the D yet ready, so they build these. And they, again, have 3 supercharged engines, a theoretical top speed of 26.5 knots, and theoretically, on 1,800, well, on the full load of bunkerage of fuel which you could carry, which is including the extra ones from memory, is 4,400 gallons. Let me check my notes. Yeah, 2,600 plus 1,800, so 4,400 gallons. Could do roughly 500 nautical miles at 12 knots. The rapid-firing pom-poms definitely did their job. There is a reason this vessel is packing 2 of them. And let's see. Let's see. The Rolls-Royce Mark 14 had a semi-automatic horizontally sliding breech block, and whilst it worked on a manually trained pedestrian mount, it's interesting as to whether or not it's successful. It's not fast enough firing really for the role, and they're not really that keen on it. But basically, the Mark II does the ultimate volume of the work, and that seems to be very successful and fitted to everything. Yeesh. And that was a quick Google search of the whole Navy of the Navy Webs. Because I didn't, for some reason, have notes on different quick firing 2-pounders. I should build up a note profile, dossier on them. I should do, or maybe I have one. Maybe just in a different Word file somewhere. Anyway. Basically, motor gunboat is, yeah, you're taking a lot of machine guns. You're taking a lot of firepower. Seven Crowder, the extra machine guns being there by magic. Now, I was quite sure whether they came... Look, in the nicest way, some of these vessels would be poster boys today for the Second Amendment, in that they are almost more gun than boat. In some of them. But of course, they don't hang around for too long because, well... what comes next after them? But first of all, let's go to our 1942 Regia Marina friend, the CRDA 60-tonner. I love these vessels. Now, open up my Word file. Often also known as the Motos Lorente, or MS boats, It's these vessels which actually sink the HMS Manchester, the light cruiser, the Town class light cruiser, which is of course the highest success achieved by torpedo boats in the entirety of the Second World War. Their whole claim to fame to being giant killers is thanks to two of these vessels sinking a British light cruiser. Now, this is taken after its 1950s upgrade because, frankly, I liked the colour photo. All the rest are, of course, quite black and white. But this is post-World War II. As originally built, they carried two 21-inch torpedo tubes, two 18-inch torpedo tubes, and up to four Breda 20mm and depth charges. The thing is, though, please note, the Italian Navy, of course, as said, used two of these, and they managed to sink HMS Manchester. But of the 36 completed, 22 were lost. 2 are still preserved, but 22 were lost. Too, the RN intended to put their most aggressive people on destroyers. Just imagine the kind of people that they assigned to the MGB fleet. Look, basically what you do is you take a junior officer who is overwhelmingly focused on their opponents. You pair them up with another junior officer who is going to act as some sort of moderating influence, or rather ensure they actually think before they act. So either one of them is the XO and the command, and one of them's the XO, one of the commander. It doesn't matter which combination they're in. They're usually both pretty much lieutenants. Okay? They're going to be junior officers. They could well be War Commission only. And in fact, a large number of them were. And there's all sorts of really cool books written about the experience on torpedo boats in World War II. And you'd send them at the enemy, in a pack of them. They'd be on a vessel, they'd have a couple of chiefs for experience, they'd have one of them to keep the engines going, and the other one to keep the torpedoes and guns going, and you have a couple of specialists who are rated as killicks, and a leading sonar man, a leading radio man, a leading radar man, those sort of people. Then you'd have, they would have a couple of assistants each, and then you'd have the rest of the people who basically were either gunners or were engine room. And you'd go. Is there a relation? Well, the thing is, these vessels are developed after the Regia Marina start to think that, frankly, they're not getting... How do I put this quietly? They're building them, they're ordering them, when the Regia Marina is starting to realise that the MAS had sacrificed too much seaworthiness, too much of their capabilities for their speed. So yes, they could achieve 45 knots. That was great. But they couldn't achieve 45 knots in all sea conditions, and when they couldn't achieve 45 knots, they were easy prey. So what happens was they capture some of the Yugoslavian Orjan class motorboats, which, well, let's put it this way, had been built by Lursen, who are the same people who build the Schnell boats. And they look at those designs and they think, well, they've got rounded hulls. They can handle rough seas far better. And so they develop their own versions based on it. So these are based on Italian interpretation, Italian needs of a vessel which they captured, which was a Yugoslavian derived version of an early Schnellboot. No, Orjen. Orjen. In my notes, so it could be in my notes of spelling it wrong. That's the quite strong possibility. That's always a strong possibility. Some of these notes have been converted from my own hand cribbing notes to Word files, so there is my handwriting involved there somewhere. But yeah, I have. The fact is, these are being built in service because even the Mediterranean isn't as smooth as the Italians want it to be. Because remember, war was supposed to be over quickly. The Maz boats are great for summer in the Mediterranean, for even some parts of spring and autumn. But winter in the Mediterranean, even the Mediterranean starts to get problematic for them. And they're going, this isn't working. And the trouble is, again, for the Italians, is that if they are caught and they're not able to do their speed, then vessels like this, and disturbingly enough, these quite often, disturbingly often, will catch you. And they will pepper you full of holes. This is really not supposed to catch you. Its top speed is supposed to be 12 knots. You can do 45 knots. This is not supposed to catch you. If it does, something has gone very badly wrong. This catching you is acceptable, but it's a case of, oh my lord, what the friggin' have they done that time? That this catching you, there's not that many of them wandering around. This catching you, well, there's oodles of them being built. There's 650 of them. They're everywhere. They're like cockroaches at this point. You know, they're just everywhere in the world. Mediterranean winter has wind. It has basically everything. These are some of the finest hulls you ever designed. These are designed for really high-speed motor torpedo boat, sort of really high-speed torpedo boats. They really are designed for the ultimate speed machines. And if you design a hull for speed machines, look at that water. That water, that is pretty much a mill pond. It is that smooth compared to most other seas in the world. The trouble is, in winter, the Mediterranean does get wind. It gets currents. And it gets other weird things going on, which mean it's not so smooth. Hence it starts to look a bit more like this, which if you notice, there's little whites on the waves up there and top there. Yeah, if you have a Schnellboot model, you could definitely kit bash this out. It's like the Italian Air Force biplane fighters. Super fast mineral, 2 rifle caliber machine guns. Yeah. But they're good vessels. So, again, this is the Vosper, the Vosper going, we're going to do like Mercedes do today, where you can get, if you go into a Mercedes dealership, and we have Volvos in my family, so, well, in this branch of family, but some of my family do actually work as Mercedes salesmen. And the thing you notice about Mercedes cars, when you go in, you start going with what you want, and you can very quickly define down, and they are almost building a custom car for you once it's spec'd out. And when I say custom car, the specifications go down so far that literally it might as well be whole runs of just 1 or 2 of production lines. Well, the Vosper are like that. They're trying to cater to every other customer. Every other customer. And yeah. Okay. So, the 73s. There were 32 of these planned. There were 41 built. 17 Type 1, 12 Type 2, and this is a Type 1 pictured. The Type 1s came with 4 18-inch guns, 4 18-inch torpedoes. How was I going with 14 18-inch guns? If they had 4 18-inch guns, that would have been fun. Just imagine that going along. Yes, we're going to fight you. We're just firing our guns. Well, good news. The other torpedo boat that you were fighting is no longer there. Bad news. Where are you the other side of the Atlantic now? Yeah. Recoil has an impact. Leaving that to one side. Top speed roughly 40 knots. Thanks to Packard engines. 3 of them. A total of roughly 4,200 without any limiters on. No, 4,200 with limiters on. Sorry. And 40 knots top speed. Crew of 13. 4 18-inch torpedo tubes, 1 20mm, and 4 303 Vickers machine guns. Or alternatively, they could carry a 6-pounder gun, which, for those who don't know, is a 57mm, 2 18-inch torpedo tubes. So they swapped the 2 of their torpedo tubes for 1 6-pounder gun, a 20mm, and the 4.303 Lewis guns. Yeah. These vessels in World War II were basically modded so much it was insane. One of the reasons why it seems all attempts to preserve any doesn't happen, because only one is lost. And that's actually lost in 1952. One reason is it seems to be sort of so limiting to keep them in the service in the Royal Navy, is that they just have been modded so much. Their crews seem to really have taken the idea that these things could be very flexibly changed to heart. And also, think about this. This thing turns up, you're going to go, oh, it's got 2 torpedoes, right, and so it's a threat to the bigger ships. But it's also got a 6-pounder. There is nothing on any of your motor torpedo boats that can deal with 6-pounder firing at it. There is no armour. None of them have anything at all which is going to protect them from a 6-pounder. They weren't going to a knife fight. No, these were not going to a knife fight. These... Well, let's put it this way. These are the vessels which, if these ones turned up, the Germans had a problem. But there is a reason why the Royal Navy doesn't produce as many of these as you might think they do, because they sound frigging amazing. And if I remember correctly, the thing that comes next is what... Excuse me a second, for some reason the Fairmile D slide hasn't uploaded. Yes, it's in the... I'm just checking through my whole system. Yes, it's in there. But it's not been uploaded. I have no idea why. Where did the Fairmile D go? caramba. No, I do not know why the Thermal D has not shown up, because it was supposed to theoretically show up. I thought it would have come up after the VOSPA. But it didn't. So why is it not showing up? It says it's got a corruption on that PNG, so let me just quickly fix that. That's annoying. That is annoying. I think we will put that one there. I'm going to as I'm changing it, as well, I have to do it anyway. I'm going to change the slide, so just bear with me a second. I'm just adding in more images of the 6-pounder because I can. Why has it... Right, and that's annoying. Hey, caramba. That is annoying. That is annoying to me. So, collection. Why did I do that? I have no idea. No idea at all. But I've had to redo this while live. Now it should be in its... Hang on. Yay! Alright, so done it slightly out of order. But the reason the VOSPA didn't really take off the 73 footer was because the Thermal D was already in service. Having been ordered in 1941, this is probably my favourite of all the motor torpedo boats in the European theatre, and arguably my favourite in the entire World War II. The reason they are my favourites? Well, because the Thermal Ds, there are 228 built of the 229 planned, and only one is cancelled. So Thermal designs alone outproduce pretty much most of the Axis. These vessels, in their motor torpedo boat configuration, were 120 tons fully loaded. In their motor gunboat configuration, were 109 tons fully loaded. They were 35 meters long. They were beamier than most other torpedo boats in that they were 6.35 meters beamy. So they were wide girls. I'm not supposed to say that. Nice way, ships in British terminology are all she. Motorport torpedoes, all those ones. So, if I do use that phraseology, before anyone gets offended in the comment section, and I hope most people won't, just remember, I spent 36 years of my life referring to them as she's. I still do. No one seems to be upset with us, so that's what I'm doing of. But I also realise that occasionally some of my sister's friends watch this channel, and for some reason they get annoyed with some of the things I say on these things. It's a ship. It's a boat. They're called she, because they carry life. That's the whole British mythology and themology of why it is. There are some navies and some nations which do refer to their ships as being male. There are some nations which prefer them to not don't give them any gender at all, and depends on the name of a ship what they call it. So if it's got a female name, it's called a female ship. If it's a male name, it's a male ship. Now, if I expand this out, you can see the whole 6-pounder setup. The quick-firing 6-pounder is That's not really something you want. Now, please note that the phraseology used when describing their armament in any of the books I've read about them is sample. It's even... This is the thing, is it's so used in books and things so often to describe their armament that it's even got to Wikipedia as a sample armament. This is because dog boats, of all the torpedo boats in this theatre, of all of them, and motor gunboats, etc. in the theatre, have a reputation for being tricked out. And if we look at this picture that you've got here, profiling one in its entirety, start counting guns. And start counting heads and where the machine guns and the cannon all are, etc. And you then go, hang on, the list was it was supposed to have 2 6-pounder guns, 4 20mm in 2 single and a twin mount, 2 twin 303, 4 depth charges, a searchlight smoke generator. Hang on, that's got more guns than that already. Yes. It's fun. Mark Harness, I'm not bothering. I'm not even going to repeat the thing you just quoted from Nimitz. I do know he said that quote, but I am the only boy in 40 cousins in my generation. I like to breathe, okay? I like to be alive. Nicholas, I imagine the Schnellboats in Tanagon could hold their own against the early small infantry, but were they getting... honestly... The German boats and the Italian boats, it's a speed fight, and it's a maneuverability fight, and the British are prepared to accept slightly slower speed. These are theoretically 29 knots at full load, again with their 5,000 horsepower-ish of engines officially. They're prepared to accept that rather than a 45 knot vessel, so they can carry more firepower. And they could do 506 nautical miles at maximum revolutions. Again, maximum revolutions, it's not listed as maximum speed, it's listed as maximum revolutions. And that's 2,000 nautical miles at 11 knots. They had a crew of 21. Now, these vessels, what do we say about them? They are scarily capable. In all of their history, in all their performance, when you start to look at their operations and their movements around, the Norwegian ones operating off Norway, etc., they are frighteningly maneuverable. They are capable of operating in seas which pretty much no other vessel is of their size or equivalent is operating in. They operate in rougher seas than any other ships in World War II. Occasionally, some of the roundboats are out there. It's one of the interesting things is some people go, well, the account says it's E-boats. Yes, and it's presumed it's Schnellboats, but it's roundboats out there. But these... when the Germans captured them, as the Yates put us, they put them in the service of the Kriegsmarine. Everyone who operates them finds them very nice to operate and very capable. Ship recruit. They aren't always putting more weapons on their ships. Yes. Looks like we're talking about... No, surprisingly enough, they didn't have stability issues. Mainly because they're not actually that high, I think. I think the fact that they are actually quite... Compared to their length and their beam, especially, this is the thing, they are for motor torpedo boats, as I said, they are beamier. They are 6.35 meters across, so they are beamy ships. They're wide, and this is the sort of thing. It's gone for a slightly higher. It's not a fine high-speed design. It's a stability design. So with them being beamier and them having their engines as low down as they can do and having everything as much depth in there as they possibly can, they are actually quite low down. Their center of gravity is actually very good. The draft at deep load is 4 foot 8 at 11 inches. It goes between roughly 1.45 meters to 1.5 meters in deep load, mean, and that's mean. So please note, as a rule, those are the mean deep load figures, and I would you're probably going to find that the stern is lower than the fore. i.e., stern is lower than the bow. Oh, 160-ton R-boat with two 20mm, several 30 cal, and a single shot 37 against a 100-ton dogboat with a minimum two 57mm and several 20mm doesn't sound fair for the R. Again, it's not usually fair fights. The other problem that the Germans had consistently was that they would usually have 3 or 4 vessels in operation. Sometimes they'd have more, but usually it was 3 or 4. The British could quite often be turning up with 8 to 10. The British produce a lot more of these vessels, and a lot more boats overall. As often, the British combine operations between flotillas, so you might find you have 4 dogboats going along, and they might be joined by 4 Fairmile Cs, or 4 of the Vosper 70s. That was quite often a combination. You'd have some dogboats and you had some Vosper 70s in combined together. Well, yes. I do always maintain the Queen's song is actually about Fairmile D motor torpedo boats, dogboats. But, you know, plus a few hunts. The hunts might be there, but, you know, sometimes other things have turned up as well. The Royal Navy doesn't like doing fair fights. Most successful navies do not like the idea of a fair fight. That's something for other people to have, not for navies. Now, I am going to, because some people have joined us and we have got more people watching us, going to again recommend these books, and when the 3rd volume comes out, I will be very, very happy. I have to say they are absolute works of art in terms of their content, and they have a huge amount of stuff. For those who are interested in the Fairmile designs, all of them are in Volume 1. So you can go through the entire history of the Fairmile designs and what they got up to in terms of their design technology in this book. Now, what I would say is that very quickly you start to realise that the authors are trying their best to be as accurate as possible, but the crews of the motor torpedo boats, although they do have this wonderful image here, which I did almost use in the video, but decided to save for the long patrol, and it's going to be there are going to be some pictures of the actual textbook in Long Patrol on Saturday. They're beautiful pictures of the design and their construction. But yes, they do realise that the crews were making the idea of actually providing a codified, this is the armament these ships carried, list very, very difficult. Virtually impossible. I don't know if I'd agree on the tank quality thing, because the Matildas with their 40mm were very, very good tanks in their period. I think one of the problems you have is that in terms of tank warfare, the Germans get a lot of positive press, and it's deserved for what happens to an extent what they managed to do with their armour in France, etc. And they do well in that. That's a good attack. But then if you look at what the British armour does in North Africa against the Italians early in the war, etc., the British armour, if properly used, is very good. And you have to remember again, if we're going to get into the whole discussion of the Wehrmacht versus the British Army, the British Army was the only fully mechanised, motorised army in the world in 1939. Everyone else was still using horses. And yeah, doctrine radios, and also I would say the British. You have to remember that France is an Allied operation, and Allied operations early in the war with a World War I style chain of command put in place, which doesn't work. If you look at the joint operations later on in World War II, there's a far clearer command structure adopted of who's in charge and who we're coordinating with. You can see this when the whole problem of ABDA command is, to an extent, the command structure adopted, it doesn't suit the necessities of the war. And the same with France in 1940. Using horses for ceremonial duties is one thing. Using horses for other things is not. The British like to use horses for ceremonial duties. It looks good. They look swish. But they're not used as part of the military formation. And yes, case of grenades. Look, there are reports of them having Tommy guns, all sorts of things aboard that would occasionally. Some of the officers are sitting up there, right, and they're conning the ship and directing the ship, and then you get in close quarters, and what do they need to do? Well, they can hunker down in the conning tower, or they can spray with a Tommy gun, or anything else they can grab hold of. Were any dogboats converted into... I don't think any were converted from memory. There is a wreck still in Chatham and another wreck in Norway, in Ellingsøy. Which I have to admit, the wreck is probably the one in sort of that area is probably one of the best preserved wrecks in Norway. And I wanted to add it to the Scandi trip, but I don't think I can really add it there, and I don't think we can necessarily get there. But, ship shape is sorting itself out now. Drac is back from America. We are sorting things out as quickly. Gareth is back from his travels. Dan is back doctoring and helping people. And I'm back home as well, so we can now organise things far better than when we were all travelling around all sorts of different places. We really should do the organisation of these things when we're all together on the trip, but we're all too busy doing the stuff on the trip. I heard they carried Brens. I think the general tone of the thing, Stephen, we have to take with these motor torpedo boats, especially the Fairmile Ds, but also the Bs, is that they carried anything they could get their hands on, and did quite happily. So, good-looking little ships. Cosmonaut doctoring, you millennial. Well, you know, I was never quite sure whether you should include it all as treating patients, because whilst I know Dr. Dan does enjoy the treating patients, he also has to do a lot of a significant amount of his time doing admin. And that's part of being a doctor these days. So I'm going to call it doctoring, because there's the treating the patients part, which he really enjoys. But that's not. But there's also the huge amount of admin stuff he has to do, which is included in his job, but that's not really what you go and become a doctor to do. So, yeah. How's Bill Trumps? Bill Trumps has not been abandoned. Bill Trumps has been... I've been away, then Drac was away, and Jamie was having issues, and basically we are getting back to it, and we are going to be doing it. But we were supposed to meet up in Australia, and that fell through for various reasons. Sadly enough, and we were going to record a couple of videos and a couple of podcasts while we were in Australia together. That was the plan. Unfortunately, that fell through. We didn't manage to get those couple of days in Australia, and so those were supposed to cover a period, but that didn't happen. When that didn't happen, we then didn't have the time to record anything else to cover the period until we were all sorted out and organised again. No, I don't. It's not a D that was converted. I think it. Well, I think you're talking about. I think it was it a C. I think it was a B which was converted to the houseboats. A lot of Bs were converted to various things. There are lots of Fairmile Bs around, and they were converted into various things. I don't think it was a Fairmile B. D. John Shea, where can I find the pre-order of your second edition of your book? Pen and Swords website or USNI? I use the Vickers light machine gun for boat defense since that was what the founders intended. They used all sorts of things. Look, there is a myth that potentially there were some of them who were trying to work out how to mount a third 6-pounder onto their dog boats. Officially, they never accomplished this, but again, if we go back to these vessels, you can see there is spaces where you could perhaps fit it. Not sure if it's sensible to, but you could perhaps do it. There's only one paperback left of the Tribals Barrels of the country. 3 old ones, 3 new according to the Amazon. Ah, fun. No, too. Maximus, I mean, the PT boats had 120-something rockets by the end of the war. I'm sure the MGB crews would love to get their hands on those. Yeah, they had all sorts of interesting ideas of things. But pretty much the development of this is, as I started out at the beginning, they start out with torpedoes because they're supposed to be going and hunting bigger ships. And then they end up escorting convoys and protecting them from supposed to be protecting them from submarines, and some of them are designed around that. And then they find themselves fighting battles against other torpedo boats. And someone goes, well, then we need to carry something to fight torpedo boats, and that's where you get the motor gunboats really come in. And basically, the idea for dealing with them is to have something which has a lot of firepower. I see, Clarke. Christian Fisher. I'm sure I read somewhere that someone stuck a unrotated projectile launcher on an MTB once. There were all sorts of things which were stuck on the motor torpedo boats. Anything different in the second edition? Yes, I've fixed some of the interesting things which developed with the edits. And the missing HMS... the missing HMS... Oh, which one was it? Which was missing from the table. One of them was missing from the table, and... Nubian. Missing HMS Nubian from the table. Fix that. The crews didn't have... Basically, the Royal Navy had a policy that as long as it still floated and could do its operations, they were going to look the other way. Whatever the crew did, they were going to look the other way. And they did look the other way. It was helpful that they looked the other way. If they hadn't looked the other way, there could have been some serious problems. Mostly problems going, where exactly did you get that from? Well... That is the trouble sometimes. It was a case of, well... Was Hedgehog put on MTBs and GBs? As far as I know, Hedgehog wasn't. But that's probably because they were always hunting in packs. And to be honest, they are mostly not there to try and kill the submarines, but drive them off. Look, once you start to get into some of the things like this, like even these, you might have noticed there's been a theme developing with the British vessels, in that they have a lot of guns on them, because pretty much the British know what the German and Italian vessels are after. They're after their merchant ships. They're after that. They want to take those out. And so these developed to kill them. And by the end of World War II, what you're increasingly seeing is British destroyer flotillas and British motor torpedo boat flotillas basically ambushing German boat units when they come out. They're not using data from things like Enigma, etc. They are using other sources of information because the German radio system is just quite so loud. There's also, I go into this in my book. The Germans have all sorts of radio systems which squawk out and are very loud and are picked up by the British, who have a lot of German speakers in their navy for some reason. A lot of them have been learning German or New German. Especially a lot of reservists who spent time in Germany post-World War I. And so they use that knowledge, they use that ability to hear what the Germans are saying to pretty much ambush them, to work out where they're coming from and then use their radar to guide themselves in. And yeah, there are a lot of accounts of very vicious night attacks where the Germans are aiming to hit a convoy, and before they even reach the convoy, before they even get to where the convoy escort them, there's another flotilla of motor gunboats just sitting completely darked out, waiting for them to come up, and then they just turn their engines on and charge into them. 6-pounders blaring in every single which direction. I haven't discussed Exercise Tiger in this talk because whilst Exercise Tiger is important and is an important event, it honestly doesn't have an impact on the development of motor torpedo boats and motor gunboats. And it would have turned into a video. In the nicest way, if you're going to do Exercise Tiger, you need to do Exercise Tiger properly, not use it as a bit part in a wider discussion of the development of vessels. Fitcher, mousetrap was made for ships too small for hedgehogs. Yes, but again, it wasn't really. It was mainly used, if I remember correctly, it was used by the USN and Coast Guard. It was not really used by the British, and it wasn't fitted to the British motor torpedo boats. Yeah, the mousetraps were fitted to American vessels, not British. They were fitted to American sub-chasers of the Fairmile variety, so they were fitted to Fairmile motor torpedo boats. You're right. But they're fitted to ones in American service, not British service. Exercise Tiger is where some German Schnellboats get amongst some forces which are going through pre-D-Day training. And they cause a tremendous loss of life. A tremendous loss of life. But I don't have slides about that, and it's a significant enough event in the D-Day preparations that it should be discussed in a video about that, not in a video about the development of the torpedo boats, because whilst it is a torpedo boat action, it's not. Yeah. The easiest way to find guns might be to steal from crashed aircraft. Yeah, potentially. Potentially the easiest way is to just go into the various stores, especially, remember, most of these weapons you're dealing with are light weapons, are machine guns, etc., which there are large numbers of stores sitting in various places, especially as you're building up towards D-Day. You've got huge warehouses full of them in ports, often in naval dockyards, as storing them and getting them ready to, for when they're going to be used. Which means they're just there, and there's naval storekeepers around, and they go, "Oh yeah, our machine gun's not working. Can we have one?" Then you come back a while later, and you go, and someone else comes back when someone else on a shift to go, "Yeah, our machine gun's not working. We don't want to admit it. It's another one we've managed to muck up. Do you mind us?" Oh yeah, go on. And I do love some of you getting into the PD boats and Solomons, but the thing is, we're going to be dealing with the Pacific Theatre, and I said the American, the Japanese, and the Soviet torpedo boats are going to be next week's. So this is why I am not jumping in and giving the American examples, because then I'll just be repeating myself next week. That's basically it's a long enough one. I like my lives to be roughly 2.5 to 3 hours long, because that's about the length of time I want to go before I feel like having a comfort break and then logging into Discord and chatting away with people on there. And this evening I will be in the general chat on Discord. So after this is over, give me about 5 to 10 minutes, okay? Give me time for a comfort break and to check on the dogs, the fluffs, and then I'll pop in. So, with that being in mind, And considering what I've said about next week being the continuation of this, any questions? Oh, and by the way, next week, please note, the Capital Ships of Science Fiction is going to come out tomorrow. I know it didn't get... Look, there have just been so many asthma attacks, so many things this week. It wasn't ready on time Wednesday. It wouldn't have gone out before... By the time it was finished uploading, etc., it was midnight on Wednesday, and I just didn't want to put it out midnight on Wednesday because I know my slot, and I know if I put it out at 7 o'clock in the evening, for some reason, all of you will see it, as a rule. If I put it out within an hour of that point, it's usually okay, so anything from 6 to 8. But if it goes out much later than that, the algorithm seems to go, no, that's not your time. So it doesn't put it out, and doesn't share it as well. So I just put it in for 7 o'clock on Friday. Which means that the normal key ship, which was scheduled for Friday, is going to come out on next Wednesday. But otherwise, everything else is the same. And next week, on the Tuesday, it's Ranging and Stabilizing, How Gunnery Evolved from 1860 to 1960. Wish me luck on that one, because if I am still technically jobless next week, that could grow dramatically. Because that is what I am, technically, at the moment. Technically, none of my contracts for next term have been renewed yet. This is not unusual with freedom, okay? Some of them, it's not unusual. They don't get renewed and don't get sorted out till about roughly the first week or so of October. Completely normal. However, one of them what had actually been renewed, was supposed to be renewed, and sorted through, and I put in my payslips, and my payslips have for some reason been rejected by one of the upper managers. And until that's sorted out, I'm not doing any more work for them. So I have a lot more time on my hand than I was expecting, which is one of the reasons why these videos are growing dramatically, because the only things I have on my have to do at this moment are hunt for pictures and try and work out how to pay for pictures for the Flower class book and possibly the U class book if I can get both done. Work out how I'm going to afford to get my mum and sister away from this thing which keeps giving them asthma attacks, and do the videos for all of you, which are the nice things which I can do without feeling frustrated or stressed, because I can't really do either without a magic either of the other two without a magic money tree. And so yeah, the videos for all of you, you might notice that the videos grow and become even more than they normally are because I don't have that. So thank you very much, Jack Ray, for the, I think you've done 10 memberships today. Thank you. And thank you everyone for your support and your help. It really is useful. And if you can, any likes and shares and all those things do help the algorithm, and I like the algorithm going up because honestly, and this is going to sound strange, the more I always bill myself as an independent naval historian when I'm talking to various people, because it makes more sense, because I'm not particularly affiliated with any university at the moment, because I'm a contract worker, and all those contracts are 0-hour contracts, which means even if I've signed them, they can technically not employ me, or as it seems, they can dispute whether to pay me or not, which is fun. But the thing is, it's with your support that I actually am an independent naval historian. So thank you. Operator 828. Lots of stuff coming off damaged naval vessels and sitting naval yards waiting for it to be put on new boats. The 40mm Bofors? That damaged quad mat over there might have one working on it. Oh yeah, that's the other fun thing. And no one's going to notice if a damaged thing, a gun which is already, a gun system which is already listed as damaged. Oh, it's got parts missing on it? Oh, someone must have taken it for spares. It's like in the book, and this is one of the sections which caused me the most fun, was I was talking about the various ways you have of controlling your radars and your plot display systems. And the plot display system, the circling plot that required the radar to be constantly turning. And officially, some of the vessels in the 10th flotilla didn't have that fitted to them. However, the way they're being handled and their own operations description Sounds like they have that system, but officially they don't. So either someone worked out how to jury-rig the system, or someone managed to procure the system. It's kind of fun. Carrying on. Thank you, Otto. Thank you, Otto. I'm glad you enjoyed it. No, you didn't. You didn't annoy anyone. I'm sure. No. Look, in the nicest way, the whole thing about my chat, and I will say this here, is always this. As long as we keep it respectful of each other, and as long as there's no words in there which I can't let my very little cousins see, because my little cousins watch the live chat and watch the videos, I'm fine with it. And everyone else is. And it seems to work. Vision. In a sci-fi novel I read, the captain bluffs her way into the supply depot during the night shift to get around the admiral trying to keep her ship from deploying. Yeah, I think I've read that book as well. How David gone? Yeah, they're just the stuff that keeps taking them off is all round here, so I don't know what we're going to do. Thank you, Renan. Thank you, Shulmac. Thank you, Vision. Thank you, Jack Ray. Thank you, Christian Fisher. Thank you, Nautical Wolf. Thank you, Dave Brennan. Thank you, DG40. Thank you, IO2. I like all these pictures open source. Yeah, they are, and I've got a lot of those, and I've got some from Drac as well, but there are some specific ones, including there is a picture of Admiral Henderson touring a yard, which was... and looking at things which would eventually be a sloop, which would then which was the sloop which was used for the as the template for the Flower class in terms of the gun fit. And for some reason I really want that picture, but the Imperial Museum owns that picture, and I ain't getting it if I don't pay £500 for that, for rights to that picture alone. Yes, Epsom is a very bad air quality area. Thank you, John Shea. Thank you. Thank you. Good night. Is the second edition only in paperback or pre-order, or is it in both? It's seems to be only. It's only in paperback. It's the first edition only came out in hardback. The second edition's only coming out in paperback. The third edition will probably come out. Hopefully, come out in both if enough of them sell. Thank you, Steve Richardson. Thank you, Cody 85. Thank you, Ince Morrison. Thank you, Bitron. Thank you, Victor Yao. Thank you, Paul Amos. Thank you, Steve Clarke. They can't dispute. No, they shouldn't do, but they have. They've refuted. They're not paying me, and so I am not doing anything for them until I'm paid, or probably I'm trying to find other work. They are being interesting, and actually, the funny thing was that I'm not sure if they realise this on their own system. Their own notes actually came through to me of them stopping the pay and requesting a meeting about it. So I've got all the I've got it all. I've got all the proof of them stopping the pay. We'll see what happens. I say, why did the Royal Navy view the 40mm Bofors Mark IIIP as not as good as the new electric 40mm Bofors mounts that the Royal Navy introduced? No idea off the top of my head, but I'll have a look it up at some point. Everyone, from the stories of my step-grandfather, I'm going to say both procured and jury-rigged possible at the same time. More than likely. Yeah, the SD8, there's all sorts of ones with those computers. Don't say something in chat you wouldn't say to someone's face. That's the rule. Yeah, that pretty much works for me. I have on the Twitch streams I do occasionally. There's also there's a nice list that comes up before the chat, before you join the chat. Thank you, D8. Thank you, Steve Clarke. Thank you, Christian Fitcher. Thank you, Baron Newman. Tanya Verka, Seven Crew 2. Thank you, Nick Walters. Thank you, James Morrisons. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, H.R.S. Ford. Thank you, Jack Ray, Otto von Bismarck, everyone else, Brad S. and Leslie Mitchell, IO2. Yeah. I didn't miss. I just answered that 90 everyone. I said I'd have to look it up. Is the Mark IIIP one of the part of the Bofors L70 series and not the older L60? I'm not sure. I'll look it up. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone. Take care, and as said, I'll be on Discord in, well, roughly 5 to 10 minutes. Give me time for a comfort break. Take care.